All right, thanks for joining us, guys. So a bit of a special guest today. I've got Kale from BlockGrain. He's a CEO and the founder. So I've just got him joining us today to just talk a little bit about himself and the project and what they've got, in the works and what's coming up and what I guess really where that project stemmed from and what they're working towards is just a bit of a chance to see more about what they do and get more eyes on a great Aussie project. So, thank you very much for joining us today, Kale. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting us along and organising.
No worries, mate. So whereabouts are you from, by the way? Obviously you're in Aussie, but whereabouts?
I'm based up in the Mallee, so northern Victoria, which is pretty much it's a bit like a desert, but does have the capacity to produce some really quality grains and fruits and vegetables and livestock. So I was born up there and born onto a farm, a probably fifth or sixth generation farm. It was a very small farm, so it wasn't big enough to really make a living out of. So I went into education and went down that path.
Yeah.
Been in business myself for a fair bit, and then went back and did an MBA after working for a couple of years at Grain Corp, which is the largest, I suppose, handler of bulk commodities in Australia.
Yeah.
I worked there for a while. I started to understand their systems and the value they provide, and then obviously from that was able to understand the areas that perhaps they don't service as well as they could or should. So from that, I was able to then come up with a concept of what essentially has evolved over time into BlockGrain.
Brilliant, awesome. So so myself, I always do my best thing. I've been in business for a while now, so I started work for myself when I was 19, got in the music industry, and I've sort of done all sorts of different things, and just learned lots of different skills that I can implement in all sorts of different industries. But myself, my best ideas always come to me either when I'm having a shower or while I'm having a beer in my beer, like my beer coaster or the napkin. I used to live in Perth.
Yeah.
One of my business partners up there, or a guy I used to contract to when I was doing sales, everyone used to have a bit of a laugh when, we'd be big. I'd take some of the guys out for a beer, and then the next day they'd have all these napkins where we'd had ideas and written notes and they'd put everything, written everything down.
Yeah.
But, I mean, with yourself, on that, I mean, like whereabouts did the idea of BlockGrain spark? Like obviously something's just sort of popped one day and said, this is how it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it never quite works as this is how it's going to happen. This is an idea that we believe, could work, and it always evolves, and you always have shifts, and you always have pivots, and you end up with a concept that is a much more robust and much more suited to the market. But where we started, the idea came because when I was working at Grain Corp, for those that don't know, Grain Corp is the largest accumulator of grain across Australia, which they're largely now primarily a malt company. They have a lot of malt houses all over the world as well, Australian owned to a degree. They basically focus on bringing grain and commodities from the farm into a centralised point. And when I was there, I started looking at what was going on from a farming perspective, and were the needs of farmers and ultimately the people who are buying grain being met. And Grain Corp's system delivers exceptional value in certain ways, but there was a big lack between where the world was going and the evolution of farming and the end user. And if I explain that a bit, we now have machinery at harvest time that is pulling off enormous amounts of grain, so much so that they cannot keep the supply chain to sites or bulk handlers like Grain Corp running. So they had to come up with a solution of how do we get this grain off so it's not damaged, and how do we then protect it? And so some guys by the name of Silo Bags Australia, Ian Medrill is his name, brought in silo bags from Argentina, and they're essentially like a huge big plastic bag that allows you to harvest instantaneously and store that grain on farm, which meant all of a sudden all this grain that was going in the system staying on the farm. So now you have a system where all of this grain is stored on farm in a physical form, but there's no software around it. How do you know what's in each bag? You can't finance against that bag. You cannot use that grain for any asset. It's just stored on farm. So we have this huge issue where all this grain is being stored on farm, more and more of it. Farmers are getting much bigger, so they don't need intermediaries. They
Yep.
have all this grain stored on farm, but they have no way of leveraging it to obtain the best price, to manage all their logistics, and to be able to use it as an actual financeable asset. So I
Yep.
started to look at that, and I thought there's a huge opening here, because the studies that I did when I was at Grain Corp showed that all the big guys, my 20 biggest growers, were all leaving the system, what we call the system-based grain. They all
Yep.
wanted to buy their own trucks, run their own supply chain, and manage all their own stocks. Now,
Okay.
this is in grain, but it also translates to wool, to fruit and vegetables, to every other commodity that we work across. And so then I thought, okay, well, that's great. We know that that's one trend that's occurring from the farmer's end. What about the consumer end and what they want, and the millers who are milling this produce?
Yep.
And the other trend that you know is occurring is people want to get visibility over what they're eating and where it's come from, what chemicals have been applied to it, how it's been transported, what is the footprint of that grain, what is the the cost to society of producing that grain, and all these other things throughout the supply chain that the consumer, being people like you and me, and particularly in Asia where you've got 300 million in the middle class or more, potentially more, I think, are all asking for. What is going on? And so all of a sudden you have the foundation of an ecosystem that really need support, being the farmers, and you have a consumer who's demanding something. And then if you can bring those two together in a system, you then have a complete supply chain from traceability. You're solving the core critical needs around farmers, their liquidity, their financing, their contracts, their logistics, and you link the two together, and you have basically you have a business. And so what we had to do that was to be able to build out a range of software applications, which we've been testing for 2 years, that basically manages all the farmers on farm grain. It allows them to deal with their consultants. It allows banks to integrate. It allows for logistics companies. So we've built, theoretically, and I hate to use it, and we've built basically a full logistics system, but like an Uber for freight, that allows bulk freight and bulk commodities to move up and down the highway and integrate and pass that data onto farmers and pass that data onto manufacturers, and who can pass that data on to consumers. So that's where the idea started very basic, but that's where it's evolved to.
Yeah.
And we've been out there. We started well before blockchain was a thing, if that makes sense. We were been in business for about 4 and a bit years now, and we basically we've been trialing. We've got contracts with the largest brokers in Australia. We've got a considerable amount of growers. We've been trialing the system with them and some logistics providers, and now we're at the point where we've just launched our system, our market version to our grain brokers, who are like a consultant who help growers with all their paperwork and inventory and everything like that, marketing.
Yep.
In about 3 weeks' time, we launched to farmers and logistics companies. So as of the end of September, early October, our system is live. So we're probably one of the only, between us, Verizon, State, Power Ledger, we're probably one of the only blockchains out there, companies out there who has a live platform. I mean, the one thing that you'll understand more than most is most of the projects out there just have an idea, and some of them have an idea with a hell of a lot of ether behind them and money, but it's still just an idea, and they haven't really gone through the hard yards at that point. So,
Exactly.
so we're at that stage now where it's all engines go, and now it's even expanded to the point where we are getting contact from some of the largest businesses in the world now who sit in the agricultural space, who are looking to do pilots with us. And probably one of the hardest things we find is, we have a great community out there who are keen for information, but because we're not dealing with small entities, we're dealing with very, very big commercial clients. There's only so much information we can really let out the door in terms of what we're doing, which we feel a bit sad for our community, who are really supportive and really want to get some information. But these are commercial arrangements, and the clients we're dealing with, you must do the right thing by them. So sometimes we really want to tell them, hey guys, look, we're working with considerably large breweries and other industries that we're doing some pilots with, but sometimes you're bound to keep things quiet until it's eventuated. So yeah, it's all progressing well.
Definitely. So I think that's one of the biggest things. I think, just sort of how you finished on that. I find, in the crypto space, like essentially, like you said, it's kind of like, it's kind of like essentially it's kind of like a stock market, and you're investing in a business hoping that it's going to do the right thing and that you're going to get a return on your investment. Essentially that's in a real simplistic term, that's kind of what it is. But then you've got the actual blockchain technology behind it and how the project is using that technology to be able to grow their business, etc. But I guess with that, there's a lot of household investors and a lot of household supporters that they have never even thought about getting into the stock market, but crypto just seems so household friendly and so much easier or engaged.
Yeah,
They don't really
it
have.
does.
Yeah, they
It
forget
is, but there's
education.
consequences too. I mean, we you have to be very careful. There's so much smoke and mirrors in this space. I would say 95% of projects are smoke and mirror, and that's generally across the board. We've travelled a bit. We've been to Consensus. We were voted, I think, one of the top 4 startups at Consensus in Melbourne, which was really, really cool. We've met a lot of people all around the world who have been able to raise a lot of money on no more than just a napkin that you spoke of earlier. And the difference between having money and being able to realise that is it's just absolute opposites. There's so much work and hard yards that need to be done to even quantify whether you have a business. Just because you have a heap of ETH and you've raised it off a community doesn't mean you have a business, and doesn't mean that you can execute on it, or that your team's working, or that consumers even want your product. So the biggest ones that we do when I look to buy myself personally is companies like Horizon State, Power Ledger, who are out there doing POCs, who are out there with working software, who have proven that there is a need for what they do. They're the ones that I really get behind. And we're aiming to put ourselves in that same category, because we find that just even advisors, there's so many people out there. I mean, if you looked at LinkedIn 2 years ago, you might see every now and then someone working for blockchain. There is that many blockchain and crypto specialists in the world now. It's just absolutely astronomical. And I think the key thing for investors out there is finding, where do you get your information from, and what communities are you a part of? And people like you who provide a service, who are out there trying to help the community in a positive way, and it's fantastic. We also work with Alex Saunders from Nuggets News, and people like him who are out there, who are educated, who are doing the best they can to provide real value and quality conversation. They're the people that we go to. We also do a lot with Joe Blackburn from Crypto Coin Trader. Danny Sassam, guys like that who aren't out there trying to create a negative buzz, or aren't out there trying to line their own pockets. They're the ones that we deal with for information. And you'll find that out there, for everyone who is, there's 2 things. For every one person out there who understands what is going on in this realm, there's 100 that don't. And for every one person in this industry who actually does something, who is what we call a doer, there's 100 that aren't. And so it's very dicey, it's very frontier. And, for investors out there, you have to take your time and find out, where you lie and who you listen to in this space.
Yeah, and it's very hard to, like I said, with the smoke and mirrors, it's very hard to see what's the right information as well, because
it's very hard. It's very
like
hard.
Facebook and Twitter, if you've got someone that's not doing the right thing and they have 40,000-50,000 followers, it's kind of sometimes
it's very hard. It's and then you got to look at what's real followers. Like I can jump on one of those websites today and get as many Twitter followers as I want, and as many likes as I want, and as many YouTube follows. But at the end of the day, people start, or they should be starting, to see through that. If you see a YouTube follower who's got 40,000 apparent YouTube followers, but each of his posts has maybe 1 like, you start to say, well, that doesn't seem to be right. Start to ask these critical questions. But, as much as you and I sort of are aware of it, it does happen, and it is out there. There's so many communities. I've spoken to exchanges who want to list with us and who have asked us to go and basically inflate our community. And the first thing we've said is, guys, that doesn't do any justice to the people who have stood behind us and who have got us to where we are today. B, it's illegal in Australia, highly illegal, to inflate any perception around your product. So A lot of international people probably don't understand that Australia is welcoming of crypto, but we have some regulation and rule around it, which I think is good. I think it's produced. I think we have Power Ledger and Horizon State. I think are probably the best startups in the world in terms of the crypto space. Particularly Power Ledger for the way they've done things and been able to commercialise it, and Horizon State for their ideals. But Australia has produced a number of good cryptos to date.
Yeah, because I was saying, like, I've read a lot of articles and just being in the space. I spent a lot of time researching and reading articles and different publications and websites and all sorts of stuff. And just one of those common things that we tend to hear about is how Australia is just leading the blockchain race because of the fact that a lot of the projects are actually implementing what they say they're going to implement. And people carry on, there's regulation coming, but people don't understand that the regulation is going to grow the space. It's going to make it more secure. It's going to make it more stable. It's going to make it safe for investors.
Exactly. It just needs a little bit of regulation. We don't need too much. There's a couple of things in this space that probably annoy me a bit. The idea that I sort of embraced, particularly after talking to Nugget and guys like that, is that the idea behind this initially this coin offerings and things like that was to get the individuals and the mum and dads to be able to benefit from basically going to an initial token offering, rather than going through all the big guys and the fat cats and giving huge discounts and basically letting them make the money and leverage it off everybody else. And that was the idea, and that's what we stuck by in our coin raise. So we didn't have any big money, didn't have any big investors, we didn't have any big big whales or anything like that. We didn't do any discounts. What you find now though is, and Bitcoin and Ethereum are a great example of it. The big money's moved in and they are controlling it to a large degree. And you'll find that most of these ICOs that go out there and they sell out within, inverted commas, 5 minutes and things like this, the reason they've sold out is because they've already literally sold out to the big institutions and given huge discounts. And basically, my point of this is to say that what had started as, if you look at Bitcoin, it was a very, very shady background is how it started. But it's now being commercialized to the point where we are reaching that stage where, again, we're going straight to people who are raising money, going straight to the big ICO, the big funds, the big institutional investors. And again, it's those guys who are making the money, and the average guys are starting to miss out. So it's people who come into this environment and believe, it's all fair and it's all trades as it should, and everything's rosy, need to understand that the big money is in town, and a lot of these ICOs have already given huge discounts before they even come to work with the general public, which means there's obviously pressure on their buying price from day one.
Yeah, of course. Because I think we've seen, especially towards later half of last year, and people are. So you kind of see what happens when that big money starts to come in and things just really start to gain just a load of momentum. People, again, same thing that with all this talk of thing, and I think like the SEC thing to me is not going to make a great.
No.
It doesn't really affect anyone. Their legislation and things doesn't affect anyone except people in the US. But people forget this. They get all caught up in the hype, and but I think the reason that these ideas are starting to come up, like as you say, there's a lot more big institutional money starting to come in, and they're like, well, we've got even more money that we can put into this if you want to do it our way. And that's why these things like your ETFs and stuff are starting to come in, and the SEC starting to look at it. But moving on to the moving that onto the ICO stuff, like you're saying with the discounts, you see people. I seen towards the end of last year, even early this year, first couple of months, there was ICOs giving up to 80% discount on a bulk order, and it's like,
yeah, I've heard more than that. Some doing 120, and it's not right. Yeah,
I just don't understand. And then as soon as the ICO goes live and there's an exchange, they just dump it all for what everyone was bought it for. And then that's made a load of money,
And that's probably what upsets me a bit, is that the average investor out there, like not all of them are, they're people that are, you're playing with hard-earned cash. These
Yeah, of
people
course.
work hard, and they're of a belief, and rightly so, that they should be able to enjoy their life without the institutional guys coming in and taking all the cream off the table. And when companies do this, what it does is, and I'm not sure, you can't say everyone, but a lot of companies out there are doing it. What it does is it ruins an industry, and all of a sudden you have people raising ridiculous amounts of money, and then the average investor gets burnt. And so what happens is the average investor is, once bitten, twice shy sort of thing, and eventually they start to say, well, I don't think I need to be in this space. And so what happens is you ruin what could be a complete ecosystem.
Yeah,
It becomes basically controlled again by the big funds.
exactly. Yeah. Which is sort of why everyone gets into crypto, because they're like, it's our chance to actually make some money. It's our chance to be part of something big. It's our chance to.
Yeah, and look, you're dead right. There's so many people out there. Like, we've got guys out there. We've got this guy in our group, Alex Stern, who's an absolute gentleman who just loves what we're doing. And we got a dozen of them. I couldn't mention them all, but these guys love and they believe in what we're doing, and they believe in giving value back to farmers and being able to ensure that farmers get the most they can for their product, build
Yeah.
their own brand, and build a supply chain. Now, we went day one. A lot of the big commercial companies out there in agriculture didn't want anything to do with us, because they didn't get it and they didn't understand that guys like this, the smaller guys, they knew as a consumer what they wanted. And so they believe in what we do. Now, if you take away that, all of a sudden, we really are, we're going a 180 straight back to big money and basically the big people controlling everything again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Sweet. So I think with, I guess, seeing as we're talking about ICOs, I mean, with yourself, sort of putting together your ICO, and you did, you went around and did your tour and stuff. Like, were there any big challenges and stuff that you guys faced on your ICO, or like on your tour and preparing those finals? Are you all pretty prepared, or?
Look, our token sale was pretty good. I mean, the tour was great. We got out there, like, we were in places. In about, I think, a space of, I can't remember, but I'll see if I can do it. This was a while ago, but basically, we'd been, I think we went from Sydney, what did we say? Well, I think we went Sydney, Brisbane, Toowoomba, Adelaide, Perth, back to Melbourne. We went to Hawaii, to Consensus, to London, to to London. We were in India, then straight back to Australia, where we then went to, where did we go next? Then we went to, I think we had a few other destinations. I can't quite remember, but we were back traveling again. And then after that, we were back around the world again for a bit more flying. And then, we've been around the world twice pretty much, and all over Australia in the space of 4 weeks. That's probably the biggest challenge, is just timing. It is costly too, but that's also about gaining feedback for us. It's about gaining consumer feedback. I mean, about our product, and going to meet people who are actually going to use this product. I mean, we're in Toowoomba, and some of the guys up there, the young farmers, are that switched on. Like, they understand crypto, they understand farming, obviously, they understand everything. So their understanding was actually mind blowing. And it was a small crowd of about 150 people. But the questions and the feedback that they had was just astronomical. I mean, they got it, which was really, really, it was really sort of uplifting for us, because sometimes you don't know whether your idea is right, or whether it sort of fits what the consumer wants. So
yeah, cool. Well, I think you've kind of entered the space at a really good time as well, because I think, like you said, yourself, you come from a farming background. I spent a bit of time myself on a sheep station in Narracott, South Australia.
Narracott, yeah. I'm heading over to South Australia. When am I there? 2 weeks' time. I'm going to meet a heap of people over there. So yeah.
Huge. Yep. There's huge, huge farming over there. It's pretty much all that's left there now, since all the industry is starting to pack up. But I think with that, it's people, yourself and myself, very similar age there. We're kind of that next generation where people are taking over their parents' farms, so they are going to be,
absolutely.
They're going to be a lot more educated on the space, and they're going to have, phones or smartphones and internet, computers and iPads.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that's the other thing that I spoke about. The other two convergences. One was an industry convergence where
Yeah.
a huge shift in the way commodities were being handled. The other one was a consumer demanding more information, and that's the third one is the next generation who are just coming through now who have never ever, I suppose, not had a smartphone. I suppose so.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of
So
glued.
all things are lining up, and then you have blockchain that come over the top. So that's the right time.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's best timing. Yeah, awesome. Well, no, I think that's kind of we really sort of had to ask, and I think we've definitely covered, and we've gone over a few other things as well. But I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to go over?
No. I mean, that's it. I mean, we're very happy with our sale. We love our community. Our product's going out. We have some, there's about 6 or 7 POCs that I'd love to be able to mention that we just can't at the minute. Some include integrations with current cryptocurrencies, current crypto businesses, I should say, and
Brilliant.
we have all that. But we are, at the minute, we're working with a number of exchanges to work out which exchange to go on now. For those out there that don't know, that's a task in itself because there are so many exchanges out there. We obviously have BlockBid, who's been fantastically supportive of what we're doing, but there are a number out there, and it's about deciding how do you work out which exchange you go with, because there are so many exchanges out there that charge so much money, which is, we're not into that. We don't, if the exchange if the exchange believes in our token and our community and what we're doing, then they're welcome to reach out to us, and we'll do what we can to satisfy their requirements, and hopefully the community will speak for itself and the volumes that turn through their exchange. But there's so many out there that are trying to charge a lot of money for very little return. There's so many out there that that haven't got liquidity, that don't provide volume. So it's very, very, it's not a cheap exercise. It's something that that you have to make the right decision. So we're working on that now. We've had a number of offers, so we have the capacity to choose between a number of exchanges. The critical part is when you look at it is a lot of it is timing too. I mean, Ether's now at 195 US as it currently stands.
Crazy cheap.
It is. It's amazingly cheap. The critical part is because we are all at this stage in an early cycle, in the early life cycle of cryptos, we are all pretty much pegged to ETH and pegged to Bitcoin. You want to make sure that when you do hit an exchange, you're hitting it in the right time. You don't want to be hitting it, say, 3 months ago when it was just, all negative, because that effectively will have a huge impact on what you're doing with your token.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
So we're just weighing all that up, and look, the project's great. I think our team's now probably nearly 30 strong. We have an exceptional team. I'm out on tour. What have I got? So this week we're up for our big meetings this week with the board, going through all of that as of tomorrow, and then I'm on a road show with about 15 different broker companies, and then I go into South Australia where we're meeting with the University of South Australia to continue that, and then so it's just hectic. It's it's ridiculous.
No sleep for the wicked, eh?
No, there isn't.
Easy, awesome. Well, for obviously, so there's not a lot that you can talk about at the moment with the things that you're working on. But when you come to announcing them, will they be done by your Twitter or your Facebook?
Yeah, on our Facebook. We do it across Facebook. We do it across our Twitter and across our Telegram group. We keep it pretty simple. We don't want too many groups because it just becomes more effort and more time to control. But we just do it across there. I think hopefully in the next couple of weeks there'll be some pretty exciting things coming along, and we'll be able to sort of really generate a buzz.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Carl.
No worries at all.
Good to have a chat. And I guess, maybe in a few months once you've got things a bit, so you've got some announcements and stuff that have come out, and you've got some partnerships that you can talk about. It'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
To catch up.
No problems at all.
Awesome. All the best with everything, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Cheers, mate. Bye.